The 90s to mid-2000s produced some of the toughest men in football history, but one man, arguably more than the others, truly earned his reputation as a hard man. This same player controlled a midfield that had Ryan Giggs, Paul Scholes and David Beckham. That man was Roy Keane. In his prime, he was as aggressive as they come and also a true leader, but what many fans do not know is how technical and excellent other areas of his game were. Let's go back to where it all started. Born into a middle-class family in 1971, Keane grew up loving football but struggled to get into teams. He was dismissed from the Ireland schoolboys squad for being too small and had failed trials with several English clubs. The Irishman had to take on menial jobs to survive. It wasn't until he was 18 years old in 1989 that he managed to sign with Cobh Ramblers, a semi-professional Irish club. After an impressive season with the club, Keane's big break came after he had impressed Nottingham Forest manager Brian Clough during a trial. Things are starting to look up at this point, but what followed was a period of ebbs and flows. Keane would go on to make over 150 appearances for Nottingham Forest, and while the First Division team had impressive runs to the FA and League Cup finals in 1991 and 1992, they lost both times. During his time with Forest, Keane was their best player, which made him a hot prospect for bigger clubs, and although he couldn't stop Forest from going down in their relegation battle, a clause on his contract allowed him to leave the club without any hiccups. A lot of European clubs are showing interest: Barcelona, Real Madrid and Blackburn Rovers, just to mention a few. In the end, Manchester United hit the jackpot as they won the race to get Keane's signature, signing the Irishman for £3.7 million in 1993. A British transfer record at the time, it would be one of the best signings in football history. By the 1993-94 season, Keane was already clawing his way into the first team thanks to established players. Come the summer of 1995, there were big changes to the team. Huge names like Paul Ince and Mark Hughes left United while players like David Beckham and Paul Scholes made it to the team. With Keane being the most experienced, he took it upon himself to lead by example as he entered into his prime. Meanwhile, Manchester United were either winning league titles or giving league winners a run for their money as Keane began to peak. After Eric Cantona retired in 1997, Keane became the captain of the Red Devils. However, an anterior cruciate ligament injury would restrict him to a handful of appearances that season. The following season was glorious as Keane's return guided United to a treble of the league, FA Cup and UEFA Champions League. But what many of us remember is his inspirational performance against Juventus in the second leg of the Champions League semi-final. Keane helped the team to fight back from a 2-goal deficit to win 3-2. During the match, he received a yellow card after a foul on Zinedine Zidane, which ruled him out of the final, but his performance after being carded remains his best ever as a footballer. Keane would continue to be a solid presence in the team, and although frequent injuries and controversies clouded Keane's later career in the early 2000s, we need to talk about some of the qualities that made Keane one of the best footballers ever. Keane always demanded 100% from himself and his teammates. Being the most determined player on the pitch, Sir Alex Ferguson once said that Keane would rather die of exhaustion than lose. His performance against a star-studded Juventus squad in the Champions League semi-final in 1999 is a case in point. Keane covered every blade of grass and was just relentless. Although he was talented in his own right, what made Keane different was his drive. He would later claim that fear drove him to become a better player, but whatever it was, Keane was always tenacious no matter the situation, and he made his teammates better players. However, while most of us already know this part of Keane, we often forget his intelligence and technical ability. Keane was able to read the game brilliantly, which helped him to intercept passes. When talking about his prime, you could argue that from 1995 to 2000 was the period where Keane's athleticism intersected with his overall technical ability. The younger version of Keane was a great box-to-box player who dominated games. His technique never looked the smoothest, but he often got the job done. He was a clean striker of the ball and had a great range of passing. After his devastating knee injury, Keane was slightly more reserved as he played more regularly with Scholes. A player who made more of the forward movements, but even at that, Keane still dictated the tempo. When it came to passing, Keane held his own in that department. His passes weren't the flashiest, but they were often consistent and helped to move the play forward, thus contributing to United's attack. Keane possessed a good first touch, which helped to give him more potential passing options, and his spatial awareness often meant that Keane chose the correct passes, and this made him an efficient passer. As a ball carrier, Keane wasn't as expansive, truth be told. Compared to some of his contemporaries like Patrick Vieira, Keane could be seen as average. However, we did occasionally see him go on lung-bursting drives through the centre of midfield, especially when he was younger. After his ACL injury, Roy Keane became more selective on when to make those on-ball runs. Also, his ability to drive forward from the heart of the midfield through his off-ball movement was just as good. Perhaps one of the parts of his game that he is most famous for, Keane had a combative style in controlling the midfield. There was no subtlety in how he went about his business. If Keane saw an opportunity to make a tackle, he would go for it without thinking twice, and he wasn't afraid to live with the results. Keane's calculated aggression often instilled fear into opponents and usually allowed him to break up possessions. Another aspect of defence Keane was good at came through tactical fouls to stop transition opportunities. He literally did the dirty work for the team. As he entered into his later career, however, it became increasingly difficult to recover back in time when he was out of position, and opponents occasionally saw opportunities to make runs on the Irishman's blindside, getting themselves into dangerous areas. But overall, Keane often maintained great positional discipline. Between 1995 to 97, Keane was aggressive and combative, being at the peak of his physical powers, which is why we saw him in the box-to-box role for most of the time. When it came to team selection, Roy Keane wasn't the kind of player whom you could build a whole team around like someone like Zinedine Zidane. Keane was more of an enhancer, someone who could raise the ceiling of others and help the team to become better. No doubt, playing under the right system with a good supporting cast also meant that you didn't need Keane to be creative, because the team had the likes of Scholes and Beckham, coupled with mobile attackers like Andy Cole, Giggs and Dwight York. Still, it would be criminal to only talk about Keane's leadership and hardman persona without talking about his passing, ball carrying and technical abilities in his prime. When we look at the dominance of Manchester United during the 1990s, several names come to mind. Of course, Sir Alex Ferguson remains the biggest name, but among the players we had the famous class of 1992 with players like David Beckham, Paul Scholes, Gary Neville, Ryan Giggs and Nicky Butt. And we also had the signing of Eric Cantona, another incredibly influential figure who added a new layer of attack thanks to his outstanding technical qualities and versatility. But the man who glued everything together was Roy Keane, a quality that made the former midfielder one of the best midfielders in his generation. In his prime, Roy Keane was United's engine room. But perhaps the best thing about Roy Keane as a footballer is that everything he achieved in the sport wasn't because he was the most talented. It simply had to do with the fact that he wanted it more than anyone else, and he made the most of what he had, talent and physique-wise. You probably may not like him as a friend, but he was the kind of player that you would always want on your team.
I'm coming home, I'll follow you.